The city's temperature was plummeting well past freezing, hitting the lowest point recorded all year. Underneath the main transit bridge, the wind funneled directly through the concrete pillars, turning an already brutal environment into something lethal. Huddled against one of those pillars was Elias. He had nothing but a few layers of discarded newspaper to block the elements. His body was locked in violent shivers, interrupted only by a deep, rattling cough that had been wearing down his lungs for weeks. Thousands of pedestrians walked past the spot every day, deliberately looking away. This constant collective rejection had slowly dissolved Elias's sense of identity, rendering him invisible to the city around him. Now, the frost crept directly through the damp paper. The heat leaving his body outpaced whatever energy he had left to generate it. The math of his survival tonight simply was not adding up. Right above his head, headlights flashed as late-night commuters rushed home in heated cars. They were separated by just a few feet of concrete from a man quietly freezing to death in the dark. Elias stopped trying to pull the newspaper tighter. He let his head rest back against the frozen pillar and closed his eyes, accepting that morning was too far away. Exposure to the elements eventually shuts down the body, but for Elias, the freezing air was merely finishing a job that years of total isolation had already started. Then, the ambient light from the street lamps above was blocked. A heavy shadow fell directly across Elias's face, breaking the total isolation of his corner. Someone sat down right beside him. There was no polite distance kept, no sudden flinching or hesitation that Elias was so accustomed to receiving from strangers. The stranger leaned in. A heavy, thick coat sleeve wrapped firmly around Elias's shaking shoulders, pulling him close. Immediately, the freezing air retreated. The man radiating heat felt like a roaring brick fireplace, pouring intense, concentrated warmth directly into Elias's bones. The certainty of his own death faded. Elias opened his eyes, his mind struggling to process how this intense, localized heat was suddenly pushing the winter away. As the initial shock of the physical warmth settled, the hours stretched out before them, turning a deadly environment into a quiet sanctuary. The stranger started to talk. He engaged Elias directly, speaking to him as an equal, cutting right through the barrier of invisibility Elias had lived behind for years. They talked about the small town Elias grew up in. They traded stories about his childhood, pulling up fond memories and specific ambitions that Elias hadn't spoken out loud in decades. With every story told, Elias's physical distress lessened. The violent trembling stopped entirely, and the heavy rattling in his chest eased as he experienced the profound impact of someone actively listening to him. The stranger's presence addressed a need that went deeper than simple warmth. By being heard, Elias reconnected with a sense of his own existence that had been absent for years. Eventually, the gray light of dawn bled through the city skyline, cutting through the heavy shadows under the overpass. Elias woke up to find the space next to him empty. The stranger was gone. For a moment, Elias wondered if his exhausted, freezing brain had hallucinated the entire night. But he wasn't shivering. He pushed off the newspaper and realized his core was still radiating a deep, steady heat, completely defying the morning frost. He took a long, deep breath of the cold air. His lungs expanded fully, clear and silent. The deep ache of his chronic cough had completely vanished overnight. As he stood up, he noticed something out of place, right at eye level. Fresh marks were cut directly into the hard, weathered concrete of the bridge pillar. The carved letters read, "You are never alone, Elias, J.C." It was hard, physical proof left behind in stone. The night was real, and his isolation was permanently broken. An act of pure compassion can override the rules of nature. It mends the physical body and leaves a permanent mark,